Join us next week for another discussion about toxic relationships and how to get out of it.
Is there a way for Great. Is there a way to
Perfect.
Hi, my name is Nina. I'm 17 and welcome to Youth Radio Live Episode 3. Today we will be discussing the future of gender equality in the U.S. and our role in it. And today I'm joined by 3 of my peers.
I'm Sierra, I'm 17.
I'm Awet, I'm 17.
I'm Rami, I'm 16.
So how we experience feminism is going to be different from one another based on different aspects of our life. So for me personally, I am a teenager growing up in the Bay Area, and I come from a very big, loud, mixed heritage family. And I think all the women that in my family personally, I think they're just all very independent and hardworking. And so that's just kind of influences like my outlook on like women and feminists.
Yeah, totally. I'm super similar to you, Nina, because I also come from a loud mixed family with a lot of, I think, empowered, strong females, but I'm half Chinese, and Chinese culture is really centered around boys. And I remember this one time, it was Chinese New Year, and my brother and my cousin got $100 because Chinese New Year is a big deal.
Yeah.
And me, my sister, and my female cousin got 50. And I was young, so I was like, yeah, $50, that's awesome. And my parents were furious because they're like, that is so sexist. And that was the first time I really saw how deeply ingrained these sexist values are in Chinese culture.
Yeah, I can totally relate when it comes to being male-oriented. And so my parents moved here to America as immigrants from Eritrea. And so we have lots of strict traditions and family members who still believe in those traditions of being super sexist and not letting women be able to do anything or have freedom of like speech or like do just anything in general. So till this day, you know, I still battle with like family members who have different beliefs than I do, but it has helped me grow and shape me into know what kind of beliefs I want to believe in, which is to advocate for women's rights, no matter what they look like or who they are. You know, women are women, and that's just what I believe in. So yeah.
I'm also mixed, and that influences like the way I see feminism, but at the same time, I'm also like queer and transgender, and so that kind of influences like why I might stay away from things that are called feminist, because they have been historically so white and cisgender and like just things that I don't relate to all the time. So that makes it it's like I want to fight for these rights, but also it has historically excluded people like me. So yeah.
Totally. Like as a cis female, I've never thought about the way trans issues and feminist issues align. So can you kind of explain this to me? This is honestly the first time I've like been exposed to that idea.
Yeah, totally. So basically, a transgender person is a person who, when they were born as, you know, like people said they were a girl, they were a guy, but as they grew older, they realized that no, that doesn't fit me, and identified differently. That has to do with feminism, because we're talking about gender issues, and you know, transgender.
It's in the name.
It is in the name. So we have like different disparities compared to like cis women and like, you know, cis men, that like we don't have the same access to health care. We get killed at disproportionate rates, and like, you know, high suicide rates too. So
Yeah.
I mean, I totally think it makes sense to include people who are transgender in the conversation of feminism and gender equality, because, I mean, like you said, gender, I mean, it just, you know what I mean, it flows well into that. And also, it's just like, they're all people, and feminism is not necessarily just about women, it's about equality for people, you know what I mean? I think it's just like you want everyone to be equal. So in that idea, it makes sense to just include, to of course have inclusive of transgender people and queer people.
Yeah, I think people get really, some people who are anti-feminist sort of get caught up in this idea that feminism is elevating women above men, when in reality it's just equality. Like, we just want to be at the same level. Like, we don't hate men. In fact, we want them involved in the conversation because they have a platform that some women don't necessarily have. But I think the issue is a lot of the men who have this platform are white, cis, straight men who are in our government, and they're not using that platform to the advantage of these feminist issues just because they don't really care about them.
Because it doesn't involve them.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah, which is pretty ridiculous. I mean, if you look at the stats in our government, it's absolutely insane.
Oh yeah, it's ridiculous. Like, in Congress, women only account for 19.6% of everyone in Congress. So, I mean, it leaves out a huge part of our population, women. There's no transgender people. I mean, so, I mean, it leaves out a huge part of our population, and I feel like your government should represent the people.
Exactly.
Totally. And like, with the election of Trump, I know people talk about this all the time, and I'm tired of hearing about Trump and how dangerous he is, but like, I was genuinely scared for like women's rights. Like, they have so much anti-feminist rhetoric, and I'm like, this is ridiculous. Like, they talked about like repealing Roe v. Wade. Like, I don't think they've made any progress toward that, which I'm super happy about, but I could see that it's in our foreseeable future. Like, it's scary that our laws are sort of, they're being threatened at the moment, you know?
Yeah, I totally agree. Like, I remember when he was elected, like the next day at school, I mean, I got into my class, my first period class, and everyone, including my teacher, we were all crying, and we were all freaking out, and we just stopped class for the day, and we all just, my teacher made it like a space for us to just talk, and we all just had like a 2-hour conversation about like our feelings and how we feel, and like, I don't know, and we just had that type of conversation, and which I think is good, because it's opening up those important conversations about, you know, what's in danger and things like that.
Yeah, like, if you want to talk about like the other laws that are sort of.
So like, so we have, you know, different laws that are like, kind of like, after we know that like the Affordable Care Act was like, he's trying to repeal that, he's been trying to repeal that. And then like, you know, we were talking about like the different stuff about abortion. So like, those are laws that are like definitely going to affect us if they get repealed, or if they're in the process of, because the Affordable Care Act is like, he's trying to do that right now, but like they don't have a backup plan, like they're failing at their healthcare plan. But like, if that gets repealed, that means that people, you know, with like people that have pre-existing conditions, like their coverage for them will drop. Like, the general amount of people who have insurance, medical insurance, is gonna drop, because, you know, that was kind of covering like way more people. I don't remember the exact number, but like just a lot more people than it was. And then that includes like trans people too, because like it's called a pre-existing condition to insurance companies. So just like those two things will like definitely negatively affect all of us. And the welfare of like women, like trans people, you know, all of us,
Yeah.
like, that will be affected.
Yeah, and like, even if it doesn't like directly, even if you are not a woman or you're not trans, or like, it's going to affect you in some way. Like, like everyone in their life has like a woman in their life or a trans friend or like everybody knows somebody.
Exactly.
And so it's going to affect you even if it's not directly, indirectly. Like you don't want to see the people you love get hurt. So it just like makes sense to just share it,
I just think it's so ridiculous that like a healthcare provider can deny you coverage on the basis that you're trans. Like that's your identity. That's someone that would be someone saying to you like, oh no, you're mixed race, I can't help you. Like that's so ridiculous. I honestly don't know where some of this logic is coming from. And I also think like when they're repealing a lot of this healthcare, they're not thinking about a lot of women, they need access to birth control, or maybe like they need access to an abortion, and like trans people, they need a lot of like transitioning medication. And like it's really easy for a lot of the white cis males, and like I don't have anything against white cis males, but like some of the white cis males in Congress, I do have an issue with you because you are not representing us. And repealing healthcare, it'll be fine for you because you're rich and you can get a really big premium, but like some poor people, they can't handle that. Like you need to think about all of us, please.
Right, which is why you know, we should take control and with our lives and you know, be the people to make the change in our own lives. So, you know, I have a question. What would it look like for us to take on positions of power in our government now? Like,
I think for anyone to get to that position of power, I think it would be just so simple as like opening conversations and like I think you just need support and you need to just start talking to people. So maybe people who aren't as like open-minded. I think, well, first of all, you need to try and be more open-minded or just like talk to people who aren't and try to just, you know, not engage aggressively and be like, you're wrong. Like, you know what I mean? Like, listen to them and be like, okay, that's where you're coming from, but listen to where I'm coming from. You know what I mean? And just have positive conversations. I think it's just so important.
Yeah. I think a lot of it is just really about people empowering women, trans people, minorities, just really get involved in government, because the way you change your representation is by becoming that representation. And it's going to be hard because people have a lot of ingrained values about women. Like we saw that in the past election. I think a lot of people didn't vote for Hillary solely on the basis that she's a female and they're like, oh, women are weak. She's going to be crazy when she's on her period and like nuke North Korea. It's like, no, we have that now. Good job, guys. So like, I think it's really about, we have a lot of things to break past, like those ideas, but I think we can do it. Like as a society, we're becoming more diverse, more accepting. I think we just need to keep moving in that direction and keep getting involved.
and speaking on breaking past, I know that there are so many issues with women who have that kind of mentality for themselves. It's not like anyone is getting in their way. I mean, there are people getting in their way, but it's also themselves who is standing in their own way, saying, I can't do this because I'm a woman, or I can't do this because I'm a female. And it's those traditions, and it's just the way you were like raised, I guess. It's something, and it's something that you need to take your mind and just move away and like look at it from a different like perspective and say, hey, wait, what's the difference? You know, it's about equality, and I can do this just because I'm a woman and he's a man. There shouldn't be a problem, you know? So.
And I also think like with women who have that own personal feeling like I can't do it, I think a huge part of it, and like to kind of help that, is to empower other women. You know what I mean? Because I feel like a lot, especially like as teenagers in high school and things, like you see a lot of like women putting down other women, like, you know what I mean? And I think it's so important to just uplift each other, because like what are you gonna get from like not doing it? Like, you all want to be successful and you want to have like equality for everybody, so you just need to uplift each other, you know what I mean, rather than just always putting, you need to have that women on women positivity, you know what I mean, instead of just like negativity all the time.
I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with like calling out a female if she does something wrong.
Of course not,
of course not, because like you're calling out a person, doesn't matter really their gender, but like people who actively go out of their way to like tear down other women solely because they're a female, I'm like, you're being ridiculous. Like, she can make logical decisions, you know, she's just as intelligent, just as driven, she can do all the things that her male counterparts can do. And like, I think it's so ridiculous that not just in government, but like in positions of power, there's so few females because we have these like old ideas, as you were saying, Awet, about like women need to stay in the home and women need to care for their babies. And it's like, no, we're contributing members of society. We can do the things the men can do.
Especially since white men got like a head start because they controlled everything, and now they control only like 98% of everything.
Yeah. And they're so mad about it. That 2%, they're like, I'm mad. It's like, there's this idea that there's like a set amount of like equality and well-being. So like people are like, oh, if women are getting better, then men must be on the downward slope. It's like, no, you're staying the same. Women are just going up, and like hopefully we can reach that equal level. But I think a lot of men feel really threatened, like their weak masculinity. They're like, I feel threatened that this woman is rising up, but it's like, she's a human. Don't worry about
like,
the woman aspect.
Right, exactly. You don't need to just focus on their gender. Like, they are a person, and that's all you need to be paying. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you don't need to focus on, oh, this woman's getting powerful. Like, no, this person, you know what I mean? Yeah.
Sorry.
No, go.
I think that we should, we're already kind of starting the revolution, but we should just like overthrow everyone, put all of our community leaders that have been doing this for like their entire lives into the different positions of power, so we actually have kind of like all together moving up instead of just like the people who trying to like put one person in, but that one person isn't going to change like one, like if there's like one woman of color at like a bunch of different, how you were saying like your statistics with how many people are actually in Congress. Just like actually, I know I'm just kind of trying to overthrow the government.
Kind of a little coup d'etat, spice it up.
Yeah.
I mean, have you guys seen those photos of like the Canadian Parliament? It's they're almost at parity, like meaning they're almost at like perfect representation, like 50-50, which is what most societies are, 50% men, 50% women. And like they have so many like Muslim people, Sikh people, black people, like people of all religions, races. And then you look at the pictures of our Congress and it's like men, white men, and then like other. Like, I'm so disappointed in us because we're a first world country. Like, we're the richest in the world. People look at us as like this beacon of equality, and we're really not.
Yeah.
Like, actually, like in 1997, the U.S. was ranked 52nd worldwide in terms of like representation.
Which is already terrible.
Right, women in representing in the government. And then in 2016, it's dropped to 97th in the world. So it's like, it still shows like how we're not there, like at all. And I mean, like you were saying, like, it's just, I think we need to catch up. You know what I mean? It's like, it's crazy to me though that like, usually you would think like over time, like things are going to progress and things are going to get better. And like that shows that it hasn't at all. And like, still so many ideals need to be changed and need to be,
And it starts with the leaders, and I know that if the leaders are not including minorities or trans or whatever, then they just feel so left out that they don't even want to be a part of it anymore. And I know that I was reading an article the other day, and it was a professor from UCLA. She was explaining that she's an African American woman. She doesn't identify herself as a feminist. She identifies herself as womanist because there's just so many issues with being a feminist and how it's all pro-white and all this, and she feels more accepted in calling herself a womanist. And so, the definition of being a feminist is to advocate for women's rights. It doesn't say white woman, it doesn't say gay woman, it just says women's rights. And so no matter if you're Muslim or if you're Jewish or whatever, we're all women, so we should be advocating for all of our rights. And so we need to constantly remind ourselves and even the leaders to, just to incorporate and put everyone together, because that's just what the whole thing is about. It's not just about one specific kind of woman.
How do you think that we can change the conversation of gender rights and equality?
I think a lot of that goes back to what we were talking about earlier about intersectionality. I think a lot of, just based on like the pure statistics and like wealth and like the differences in socioeconomic ranking and then how that aligns with race, like white women tend to be wealthier than minority women. And so they have the time. They can take days off work, and like they can take a week off to go to DC and like go to the march. And like historically, white women were the ones who could, advocate for voting rights, whereas black women were slaves. Like so they have this advantage and this head start, Rami, as you were talking about, the men have this head start, white women also have this head start.
Yeah,
And I think white women really have this role of, opening it up, making it more inclusive, and acknowledging that, like, the white women have certain things that they're moving towards, and then minority women also have certain things that they're moving towards, and it can all be part of the same movement. It just needs to be, like, fully incorporated. We can't leave anyone out.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, we need to be able to, I know, like, so, like, we all have, like, different, we need to, like, include our heritage and, like, what we're talking about. We need to, like, not shut up about it.
Absolutely.
That's what they want us to do.
Yeah.
And then be able to listen to the people who, like, have not been included in it. Be able to not just be like, no, we're already dealing with too much. Can't listen to you. Sorry.
Yeah.
We need to actually be able to listen to them and include in discussions.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And I want to reiterate, like, feminism is not anti-male. Like,
Right.
males
It's not.
are not excluded from this conversation.
Yeah.
But I think it's so much about knowing your place in the conversation. Like, I've seen all these posts online about, some of these angry white boys. They're like, stop trying to silence me. Like, my voice is valid. And it totally is. Every individual has their view, has their experience, and every single one of them is valid. Except that white cis males have had centuries to advocate for what they want,
Yeah.
and they have a lot of what they want. And then minority women, queer people, gay people, trans people, like, we're sort of lagging behind on this platform where we can't get what we want because no one's listening to us.
Yeah.
So I want to reiterate, men are involved in this conversation. You just need to know your place and really be supporting these women and not trying to silence them.
Yeah, it's about empowering women and making us feel like we have this safe space where we can talk about what we want rather than being shut down, letting our ideas be shut down. So, yeah, what are ways that we can be involved in the Bay Area? I don't know.
I know, Rami, you talked earlier about, like, community members, like how awesome it would be if community members could be the ones representing us in government. And I think it's really about getting involved in your local politics. Like, people always think, like, voting in local elections isn't important. Like, I'm going to vote in the presidential election and not for mayor or city council, but that is so important. Yeah, local politics do have a huge effect. I think that's important, getting involved with other women's rights movements. Like, there's so many small ways you can help us move toward equality. It's just really about seeking out those opportunities.
Yeah, also looking at, like, what's in your schools. What's your school dress code? How does that actually affect you? Like, start, like, in the schools, like, what do your peers think about all this stuff? Actually having discussions with the people that you talk to and people who are like you sometimes. Like, that's one way to start.
Yeah.
No, it's really interesting because, last week we were reading an article about, like, in San Jose in the school district, there was, like, issues with dress code, and they appealed, and this girl, she won, her and her mother, they fought against the San Jose school district about dress codes, and they won, and so they're, like, changing the dress code, and it was just about how a lot of it was very sexist because it was like they were targeting like female students, like, oh, you're not allowed to wear that shorts or skirt or whatever, but then, which wasn't necessarily the problem of, like, you can't wear that, but it was telling the females, like, you can't wear that, but when the boys were violating dress codes, they weren't told anything. So I think that's, like, really important, and that starts, like, in your school, because I know there's always been, like, issues, like, at my school or just schools in general with, like, dress code and, like, sexualizing parts of bodies. And,
I'm really lucky, like, my school is really lax on the dress code, but I think it's so weird that we're trained from a really young age. Women instead are trained to hide their bodies so that men don't get distracted, instead of teaching males not to be distracted by someone's shoulder. Like, it's her shoulder. Like, why are you staring at my shoulder?
Yeah.
I can wear spaghetti straps if I want.
Exactly.
Like, this is not a sexual thing. Like, you be okay with it, for real.
We all have shoulders.
Totally.
Speaking of the whole school thing, I know that at my school there are feminist clubs and, like, organizations that you can just go to, even if you are not, like, totally educated on the whole thing. You want to learn more. This goes for, like, men too. If you just want to be able to be supportive and to just come and like learn, you can totally check those out. And if your school doesn't have them, then there are lots of feminist organizations here in the Bay for sure. I was looking some up for yesterday. But yeah, so there are many ways to get involved. You know, if you want to get involved, you shouldn't just sit in your couch and just do whatever. Yeah.
I think the thing you said about education is so important. Like, if you want to be supporting feminist causes, womanist cause, whatever you want to call it, really educate yourself, find ways to get involved. And also on the other side, like, if you're anti-feminist, if you're anti-equality, whatever that is, but like, if you're against that, you know, you can do you, but like, really educate yourself and think about like, what is feminism, going back to its roots, like, read articles, listen to speeches, like, go to events, and like, before you have such a set view, make sure you know what you're talking about. Like, I know we prepared a lot for this, like, we looked up our stats. We made sure we knew what we're talking about. We're not just spouting some rhetoric. Like, make sure you're educated, because then you can get involved in educated conversations.
Yeah, and I mean, even what you were saying with like anti-feminist, like, I think you have to look internally, like, why do you believe those things? You know what I mean? Like, is it because you don't know about things? Like, you know what I mean? Same with people like who are homophobic or like anti-trans people. Like, why? Like, you know what I mean? Is it because you don't know? Like, the problem is, like, you have to ask those hard questions, you know what I mean? Whether it's to your peers or even, like, you know what I mean? You need to know what you're talking about. You can't just say, I'm anti-something, and it's like, do you even know what you're anti about? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Anti-something is not, it's generally not a good platform. Like, unless you're anti-hate, that's a great platform. Like, I love anti-hate everything. Anti-fascism, you do you. But, like, if you're, like, anti-other things in general, like, all the racist, Islamophobic-ist. I had a train of thought. All the isms, you're right, sorry. Yeah, if you're any of those, like, I think, Nina, you're totally right. Just, like, are you scared of them? Like, because you're not aware? Like, a lot of these things, like, we live in a beautiful, diverse community full of women, full of queer people, trans people, different races. Like, embrace that and don't be afraid of it, and, like, further these conversations. And I think feminism, a lot of people are anti-feminism because they just don't know what it means. Exactly. At its very root, they don't know that it means equality. And that's all we want, really.
Speaking of like,
no, go ahead.
Okay, speaking of like being scared and not knowing much about feminism, when I didn't know what feminism was like 2 years ago. I mean, I knew what it was, you know, like standing up for women's rights, but I thought it was all like just pro-white people. And so I was like, well, I mean, I want to advocate for women's rights, but like not just white people's rights. So I had to really like take time and like educate myself, and like just going on the internet and like reading articles and like checking out books and like listening to people speak, and just it just showed me that there are there are many ways to advocate for women's rights, and it's not just about like all white people, even though like majority of the leaders, feminist leaders, are cis white people. You know, it's still like it's not the end of the world. It's not just them. You know, there are many African Americans, there are many like Latinos, whatever, advocating for women's rights as well. So it's just about educating yourself, knowing what you're going to believe in, whether you're going to believe in good or bad. Just know what you're getting yourself into, because you don't want to just stand there and be like, oh, I'm anti-feminist, but I don't know why, just because she's a girl, you know? You want to know what you're believing in, so.
Yeah, totally.
And that goes back to like what I was saying earlier, like, you need to know what you're supporting so that you can talk to people, you know what I mean? I think, like, I've said this earlier, but like, I think a big part of it is like, just changing things is to talk to people, is opening up conversation. Like, you don't have to just outright start really big and like, get right into politics right away. You know what I mean? Like, those are great, but like, you don't have to do those things right off the bat. Like, it can start so small. Like, it can start with your friends. Like, have these same conversations with your friends, you know what I mean? Like, or even with adults who like, maybe like older people who like, maybe they are a little, like, they don't understand, you know what I mean? Because, I mean, it all depends on like how you're raised, and I think in the Bay Area, especially, like, we're so lucky. I feel like the Bay Area is just so diverse, and so we're very open to these things. So maybe if you have people who aren't, you know what I mean, talk to them. It's like, it's very simple. Yeah, absolutely. So I think that's it for our conversation today. Thank you for joining us at Youth Radio Live, episode 3. Comment down below with how you get involved with gender equality in your everyday life, and join us next week for a discussion on toxic relationships and how to get out of it. Bye. Bye.
every time.